Thank you, Steve. And we're up. Morning, everyone, and welcome to our session on critical risk and control for tyre management. Otraco has been recognising hazards, putting controls in place and reviewing the effectiveness of those controls for many years. Fortunately, we have never had a fatality over 45 years in business. However, others have not been so fortunate. In 2004 and again in 2008, an international mining fatality review was undertaken, studying mine maintenance fatalities on Australian mine sites between 1980 and 2015. 21 fatalities occurred across that period, which were directly associated with equipment maintenance. 11 of these were associated with the servicing or handling of tyres, and 10 with other non-tyre related maintenance tasks. If we break this down even further, the tasks that delivered a fatality most often were inflating a tyre, removing a tyre from a vehicle, applying heat to a rim with a tyre fitted, using a truck-mounted manipulator to handle a tyre, and re-inflating a tyre that's been operating substantially underinflated. Our industry experience indicates that some 2% of machine hours are typically spent on tyre maintenance and another 18% on non-tyre maintenance. These percentages lead to the conclusion that tyre-related maintenance has a fatality risk in the order of 10 times higher than non-tyre maintenance work. It also indicates that it is more dangerous being a maintenance fitter performing tyre work than a tyre fitter performing tyre work. To minimise the high-risk period of unfamiliarity when starting as a tyre fitter, we operate a tyre-specific training centre in Perth. Retail tyre fitting training is virtually non-existent, and as an RTO, we can tailor robust training to suit our own needs. Focusing on OTR tyres, these trainees have our lowest incident rate and our highest retention rate. So our journey, we believe that our safety system was efficient and mature enough to protect our workforce, but we had to be frank with ourselves and recognise that systems can be disrupted, and we had to implement a system which could challenge our controls, highlighting potential gaps. With this in mind, in 2014, Downer and Otraco embarked on a journey to improve our understanding of the critical risks, the tools required to eliminate the hazards, and introduce mitigation systems to reduce the consequences of an event should it occur. We believe we need to shift our focus from the high likelihood, low consequence events, such as sprains and strains, to the low likelihood, high consequence events. These are our critical risks. Our goal was to understand our risks, better define our control strategy, focus on implementing our controls, evaluate their effectiveness, and learn from any failed controls to prevent reoccurrence. We have identified 9 critical risk activities which can kill one or more persons at our workplace. Then we identified critical risk scenarios that fit under each activity, such as working with stored hazardous energy. That includes 3 scenarios: release of tyre rim pressure, mechanical stored energy risks, and uncontrolled release of high pressure substances. Our initial critical risk management tools are focused on tyre-specific risks under 2 main critical activities: working with stored hazardous energy and working with mobile plant and equipment. We use the bow tie process, which is a visual way of showing our critical risk scenarios with causes and mapping out our controls. It provides a simple and readily understood picture of the links between the unwanted event, how it can be caused, and the critical controls to prevent and minimise its consequences. Preventative controls are on the left and mitigating controls on the right. The method to decide which controls are critical is the decision tree on the right. In our operations, we can't look at all the controls all the time. We need to narrow the view to those few highly relied upon controls that will prevent a fatality. A critical control is one that is crucial to preventing the event or reducing the consequences of the event. The absence or failure of a critical control would significantly increase the risk of a fatality despite the existence of the other controls. To ensure continuous improvement, if we have a high potential incident, we go back to our bow tie, review what controls were absent, failed, or ineffective, and the reasons why. The whys are then shared across the business, and bow ties are updated. The learnings close the loop and help prevent similar incidents from occurring. For example, in this, the event's an uncontrolled release of high pressure leading to a catastrophic rim disassembly. The cause could be worn or damaged components or mismatched components. Our pre-event control is visual inspection to ensure components are not damaged or worn or mismatched, and development of the 6 key steps for safe assembly. And our post-event control, implementation of multi-layered exclusion and personnel restricted work zones, and a remote inflation station outside the line of fire. The boxes with red above them indicate critical controls. These are the controls that leaders in Otraco will be regularly checking are in place and are working effectively to prevent a fatality. This also produced verification of the development and implementation of our long-standing golden rules, and highlighted some gaps in our time management processes that need to be filled. The critical risk questions that we all ask when we're on site. 4, question 1, what are the things that kill our people or cause significant harm to the environment? What are the controls we need to put in place that are crucial to manage the risks? What is my role in maintaining the controls? And how do we know these controls are in place and working, and what happens if they don't? Sadly, in many instances where a fatality has occurred, the controls were either not in place at the time of the incident or were not effective in preventing the incident from occurring. And it is rare that we didn't know what the control was. For instance, it's generally nothing new. The effectiveness of our controls is what defines the level of risk to which we are all exposed, which is why verification of our critical risks on our operations is so essential. Every person has a role to play in developing, implementing, monitoring, and reviewing the critical risk management process. Our frontline operators and managers understand the risks and in many cases have developed the controls. They're also responsible for implementing those controls. Frontline supervisors are in the field monitoring the critical risks and verifying controls are in place and that they're effective and the work has been undertaken. Operational managers ensure the systems that support the critical controls are effective and can manage the risks. Visiting and senior managers observe tasks with frontline personnel to discuss how they manage their critical controls and risks and develop a better understanding of the process. They also seek out any suggestions from the employees to continually improve the management program. Responses are then input into our electronic reporting system where we can identify any gaps, manage resulting actions, measure performance, and monitor any trends in critical risk profiles. A dashboard is available to all levels of the business to review the process data. An important point to note is that red in this instance highlights an improvement opportunity and steps can be taken to action improvements and therefore reduce fatality risk in real time. We've developed an assurance schedule that allows us to plan our ongoing education and verification program. Each month we focus on one of the Tyre critical risks, distribute resources to discuss these at an operational level, and review controls in place at each site. Prompts are there to support discussions on what has happened on sites around the world, both within Otraco and the broader industry. Some of our challenges. There was a couple of main ones that we believe we'd encounter. How are we going to keep our workforce engaged and looking for better solutions? And how will we make sure that we don't over-engineer any new solutions? So we launched a rewards and recognition program in mid-2016, and it continues to grow. We've received some very high quality nominations, and some of those innovations I'd see are in the program that comes with this the last few days. 24 nominations in 2016 across the year, 57 in 2017, and so far this year in Q1 and 2, 81 different nominations. So we see our front people as the subject matter experts. They're dealing with the challenges and are best placed to identify opportunities for improvement and innovation. It's a structured, consistent, high-quality program that receives regular positive feedback from our clients and differentiates us from other contractors. We found our program has had a positive impact on our safety culture and has created a mindset of innovation. These kinds of improvements generated by the program are core to Downer and Otraco's values, and it shows that the often simple solutions from our people can solve complex problems for our clients. The submissions are judged quarterly and prizes awarded for winners of the 3 categories. Best improvement through innovation, which is a new process or improvement to an existing process. Personal values recognition, a nomination by peers. And an additional category that concentrates on persistent safety or technical issues that need to be resolved. Some past critical risk examples of initiatives: the shark cage, colloquially called the shark cage. Bead breaker safety cage protects the operator from bead breakers or their components that have the potential to dislodge under pressure. The lock ring catcher trolley, being sprung steel of all the rim components that have the potential to dislodge under pressure and cause injury to our people, the lock ring is it. The catcher, I'll go back, the catcher secures the ring and makes it easier to detach, move around and reinstall onto the equipment. We also have a tyre spike that some of you might be familiar with. This enables a hazardous tyre to be deflated if there's no alternatives. And also in your program booklet is the redesign of the IN80 inflation tool. So this is a commonly used tool. It's been in the industry for years and years. It had an endemic issue with that shaft ejecting from the back under pressure if it was undone. We went back to the manufacturer, made some suggestions. The tool is now changed, relatively minor change, but is now safe for operation. We won't see that issue again for those that are using that new tool. There's some developing initiatives. Barricading lights indicating the exclusion zone for handlers moving at night. So this is coming out of our current quarter of innovation. We're looking at a mini loader concept for remote positioning of Jackson stands. This removes people completely from underneath the vehicle. And one that we'll be releasing shortly is a torque tool and rattle gun supporting device that removes hands from the pinch zones, dampens vibration, is ergonomically much better for operating the heavy tooling that we use, rattle guns, torque guns and the like. So we need to provide an environment where everyone can perform to their best without putting themselves in harm's way. So unfortunately, this is a relatively recent photo. And I find the hardest part is empowering people to stop a job if the process is not right or unsafe. If the process is wrong, then we basically need to let, in my opinion, the process break so that it can be fixed. Shortcutting will produce injuries and unsafe practices. Some of the work we're doing next around critical risk management is investigating the use of technology, such as virtual reality. The idea of that is to embed chronic unease into our tyre technicians about these events. It's impossible to keep the risk real, considering its repetitive work. And some of these events are so unlikely to occur that tyre fitters may never see them in their career. But that doesn't mean that it won't occur. So in closing, critical risk management is a core component of our zero harm risk management model. So together with our zero harm framework and assurance program, incident investigation, lesson learns and data analysis, we're in a much better position to achieve zero harm as a goal. Thank you.
Hang up here for questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. That was quite interesting. Have we got any questions? We've got a bit of time. People got any questions to ask Greg about what he's presented? Or potentially any other aspects of Otraco's safety related to tyre management, tyre fitting? Really? A group this big with such a hazardous activity? No questions?
It's probably not on critical controls, but how important is process of tyre awareness from the operator? How important is tyre awareness in terms of the operator to support safe tyre management?
Thanks, Neil. Very important. It's one of our, frankly, it's one of our key KPIs in our client contracts. So getting to the operators, both as part of the induction process, seeing the new people come into site, and regularly talking to the operators and also maintenance people on site about how dangerous it is to work around tyres and not to take it for granted. We see it as a normal part of our management on the site, not just changing tyres and checking pressures and that sort of thing, to the point where our site supervisors and our site managers, I'd like to see them have a skill set where they're comfortable to stand up in front of a group of operators, strangers in theory, and put forward a presentation on the dangers of tyres and what they do as a normal process on the site. So tyre awareness is the key. And there's only so much from productivity, tyre life and those sort of things, there's only so much that a company such as Otraco can do from the hands-on perspective. It's up to the operations to get their operators on board with how to operate correctly and avoid any damage and any critical risk issues out in the field.
Reid and Duncan, Rio Tinto Reaper. So we've done a bit of work around our tyre management there and made a task-based CCC checklist. I'm just wondering, in the practical aspect of the guys doing the job, do they have a list of questions that they tick off as they go and have hold points?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
So it is a very process-driven job, and because it is so risky, we have a number of best practices that we work through, and the tyre technicians are required to work through those checklists, and there's stop points as they go to make sure that they are following the process. For me, it's a fine line between being innovative and finding or taking shortcuts. Obviously, the shortcuts are the issues which create the problems. Finding the innovations out of all of that and asking people to be innovative while not taking shortcuts. That's the issue. But as far as checklists, absolutely. Yeah, it's critical to what we do.
Okay, thank you.
Got a couple over this side.
Brendan from Capcoal. Just a question around nitrogen. What's your view on that? Obviously, that takes away any risk of pyrolysis. What is Otraco's view on that?
Nitrogen is absolutely beneficial. The issue for us is guaranteeing that you've got the purity level there. So one of our sites where we're running nitrogen, it was probably brought in more as a cost-saving benefit around sealant on the tyres, more than a safety issue. But if you can maintain that purity, absolutely. For me, there's always a question if what's happened that you're unaware of with a tyre, for instance, being topped up with compressed air, that you've dropped that purity down below what's required to prevent pyrolysis. So there's always a maybe in there. That's what I struggle with, the human element.
There you go. Andrew from BMA. I'm just interested in your verification with your supervisors and the competencies required. Have you got a package for your supervision for tyre fitting?
Yep, there's a supervision program which is run through Downer for internal recognition of supervisors. So it's a HSE leadership program. So it's broken down into different modules. So other than your certification required for your tyre fitter, there's a certain amount of time that we expect our supervisors to be working as a tyre fitter to get to their competency level and comfortable to work alone, unsupervised. And then there's a skill set that we train through safety and personal development before we appoint supervisors on the site. Then you've got a mentoring program that happens through area managers and through officers around the country. So there's always someone monitoring what's going on with the supervisor, and he's bringing his skill set up to what your expectation would be and our expectation internally within the business. So yes, there is.
I think Les has got a question. Unsurprisingly.
Hi there. When you're talking about pyrolysis, we're hearing this week that you can fit bursting discs or pressure relief discs onto racing cars. Has anybody considered doing that on trucks?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch everything you said.
When we're talking about, I'll try speaking it in English this time. Us Geordies have trouble with that. When we're talking about pyrolysis on the tyres, we've been hearing this week that you can fit pressure relief discs or bursting discs onto racing car tyres.
Yep.
Why haven't we considered that for trucks?
Good question, and I'm sorry I'm not up to speed with that. I can't really answer that. But if we have an opportunity to answer questions afterwards,
Yeah,
follow up with an answer for it, we can do that. All good?
Steve Smith from DNRME. Greg, your site teams have been involved in assisting the mines that they work at with standard operating procedures and risk assessments associated with tyre-related activities. For something like, say, a lightning strike on a truck, would their advice at a site be checked by teams such as yourself? Or would it just be left to the site team to give that advice?
We're normally a phone call made to us on site, if we're on that site, to be part of the process to determine what actions take place with exclusion zones and timelines, sort of thing. So we are included in that. In most cases, we're integral to anything that's rubber tied on site. We're in there.
Comes to you. Does it come from the site team up to your level in the business as well, just to make sure that everybody in Otraco gives the same advice?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's an escalation that happens. So if there's an event or an incident on site, it would come through from the site supervisor to area manager through to operations. So, and on from me to advise other parts of the business that there's been an event that's occurred, and that we would be monitoring that in conjunction with the client.
Thanks, mate.
No worries. Cheers.
Thank you, Greg.